So today we're going to take what we did on Monday or Tuesday and take it one step further. The big difference in today's lesson is that when we're working with our polynomials, our a term is no longer going to be equal to 1. It's going to be greater than or less than 1. So we're still going to use the same exact method that we did on Monday or Tuesday when we took our a times our c and took the factors to add to our middle term or our b term. So remember, the standard form of a polynomial looks like ax squared plus bx plus c. So when we're looking at this particular polynomial on question number 1, we can see that a equals 2, b equals negative 14, and c equals negative 36. It's important to note that they are negative. The negative or the subtraction sign that's in front of the number stays with the number. So we're going to go back through what we did on Monday or Tuesday, where we're going to multiply our a term times our c term. So in this case, we have to take 2 times negative 36. When I do that, I get negative 72. Now, I know 72 has a lot of factors, so this one's going to take some time, but we're going to work through it together. We know our answer needs to be negative, so that means our smaller number has to be the positive. So we have 1 and negative 72, 2 and negative 36, 3 and negative 24, 4 and negative 18, 5 doesn't go into it. Then we have 6 and negative 12, 7 doesn't go into it, and 8 and negative 9. So now we're done. Now we're going to go back through and we're going to add them together to see what we get. We get negative 71, so we know it's not that one. Negative 34. Nope. Negative 21. Still not it. Negative 14. We have a winner because that's exactly what we were looking for. We could keep going if you really feel like answering those next two, but we don't need to, so I'm going to move on. So if factors is something that you struggle with, you can definitely use the internet to help you find those factors to get you in practice of identifying all the factors. When you take a quiz or a test, you will only have a calculator and you won't get to look those things up. So you want to make sure that you are aware of that. So now we're going to go back to what we were doing and factor our expression. So we have 2c squared. Then we're going to use 4 and negative 18. So we're going to have plus 4c minus 18c minus 36. So now we're going to factor by grouping, and we're going to do exactly the same process as what we did on Monday. The only difference is that this first term no longer is just the letter squared. So we're going to start off by looking at 2c squared plus 4c. When I look at that, I automatically know they have that c in common. Then I'm going to ask myself the question, what number goes into 2 that also goes into 4? 2, which means 2 is our common factor that we are factoring out. Now, we ask ourselves the question, 2c times what gives me 2c squared? C. 2c times what gives me 4c plus 2. Now we can move on to the second part. Negative 18c minus 36. What number do they both have in common? Or what's the factor that goes into negative 18c that also goes into negative 36? If you're not sure, start plugging things into the calculator. You'll automatically see that negative 18 is the common factor. So negative 18 times what gives you negative 18c? C. And negative 18 times what gives you negative 36 plus 2. Because if you remember from our previous lesson, the goal is to get what's in the parentheses equal to one another. And if they are, that means you have factored correctly. So we're going to take that and go back to the beginning and factor out our c plus 2, and whatever is left goes in our second parentheses. So we have our c plus 2. Well, if I look at what's left, I have a 2c and a negative 18. 2c, negative 18. And now I'm done. Another way to go about solving these polynomials and factoring them is looking at the terms and seeing if they have any common factors from how it's set up. So let's identify A as 4, B as 8, and C is a negative 140. I don't know about you, but this big number kind of scares me. And multiplying it by 4, that's only going to get me a bigger number, which again scares me some more. So I like to see, is there anything I can do to make this smaller? Is there anything I can do that can take some of those big numbers and make them go away? Well, we can notice 4, 8, and 140. All three of them share a common factor. All three of them have a number that goes into each of them. That number is 4. So if I take 4 divided by 4, I get 1. I get 8 divided by 4, I get 2. And a negative 140 divided by 4 is a negative 35. For this one, all I did was put it in a calculator. So now, we're going to rewrite the question with our new letters. So we have 4 times a squared plus 2a minus 35. Now, doesn't this look a whole lot easier and a lot more like what we've done previously? So, let's re-identify our letters. So, we have A equals 1, B equals 2, and C equals a negative 35. So we know if we take A times C, we're going to get negative 35. Let's go through the factors. We have 1 times 35. Before I get too ahead of myself, is our B term positive or negative? Positive. But our C term is negative. So that means we have to have a positive times a negative to get our answer. But when we add them together, we need our sum, or the total, to be positive. So that means our bigger number is going to be positive, and our smaller number is going to be negative. So, factors of 35. 35 times a negative 1, 7 times a negative 5, and that's it. Makes our job pretty easy. I add those, I get negative 36, negative 34, and 7 plus a negative 5 gives me a positive 2, which means that's what we're going to use. So, I have my 4 still on the outside. It just kind of hangs out. We don't have to do anything special with it. So I have a squared plus 7a minus 5a minus 35. Now, we go back to what we were doing. Let's factor. And again, this 4 just stays there. So I have my 4 on the outside, and I'll deal with it at the end. So I have in common just an a. A times a gives me a squared, and a times 7 gives me 7a. Now they have a negative 5 in common. So I have negative 5a, or times a, plus 7. Do our two parentheses match? Yep. So my final answer is going to have 4 times, what do they have in common? A plus 7 times a minus 5. If you really feel like it, you can also multiply or distribute that 4 back in, and you could also get an answer of 4a plus 28 times a minus 5. These two things are equal, so either answer is acceptable. So we're going to look at question number 19. This question can be a little bit more challenging as it has a little bit more abstract information you have to identify. So the length of a rectangular shaped park is 3x plus 5 miles, and the width is 2x plus 8 miles. The total area of the park is 360 square miles. What are the dimensions of the park? So we're going to have to remember that when we're finding the area of a rectangle, we have to take the length times the width. So that means we're taking our 3x plus 5 times 2x plus 8. Well, and this whole thing equals 360. There are a variety of ways to be able to complete this problem. One way is simply plugging in different values for x to see what you get to see if it works out. And that's the way that I'm going to choose to show you. So I'm going to first, let's try. I'm going to pick 2 different numbers to try to see if we're too close, too far away, or what we need to do. So I'm going to start with the number 3. And I'm going to try x equals 10. Why I chose these numbers? I just chose them out of random. So we're going to have 3 3 3 times 3 plus 5 times 2 times 3 plus 8 to see what we get. It's important to remember what the parentheses equal to. If they equal to something that will work, we need to know that because that's going to give us our answer, which is our dimensions. So 3 times 3 is 9. So 9 plus 5 is 14. And 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 8 is also 14. 14 times 14 gives me 196, which is not what we want. So let's try 10. So I have 3 times 10 plus 5 and 2 times 10 plus 8. So 3 times 10 gives me 30. 30 plus 5 is 35. 2 times 10 gives me 20. And 20 plus 8 is 28. And oh man, this is going to give me a big number. So I don't think that this is our option either. 35 times 28 gives me 980, which is in fact not what we want. So we know that 3 is too small, 10 is too big. Let's try when x equals 5. So 3 times 5 plus 5, 2 times 5 plus 8. 3 times 5 gives me 15. 15 plus 5 is 20. 2 times 5 gives me 10. 10 plus 8 is 18. 20 times 18 gives me 360. So, our dimensions. (20 miles by 18 miles. And there's our answer. So I'm going to do one last question with you. Number 20. The sum of two numbers is 8. The sum of the squares of the two numbers is 34. What are the two numbers? So to set this up, I'm going to use a table to help me. So in this first box, it's going to be number A plus number B, so that it gives me 8. And then in the second set of boxes, it's going to be A squared plus B squared, with the goal of giving me 34. So first, let's go through the options that are going to add to 8. An easy way to do this is starting with 0 and working our way up. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to extend this down a little bit further. And now 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So really I don't need that last 8 and 0 or anything past here. But I did that to show you all the possible options in the way that you could add to get to 8. And I know for a fact that all of these options add to give me 8. So I'm just going to draw a big 8 to show that that section is true. If you're not sure, go and check my work on a calculator or work through them yourselves. You choose. So now we're going to take these numbers and we're going to square them. So 0 squared, 0. 1 squared, 1. 2 squared, remember that's 2 times 2, which is 4. 3 squared, 3 times 3, 9. 4 squared, 4 times 4, which is 16. Well, that one's easy because it's the same. 5 times 5, 25. 6 times 6, 36. 7 times 7, 49, and 8 times 8 is 64. So now we're going to add them up. What is 0 plus 64? 64. 1 plus 49? 50. 4 plus 36? 40. 9 plus 25? 34. 16 plus 16? 32. Did we find our winner? So the answer to our question would be 3 and 5.